Transmigrated as a child's mother, striving to become a winner. Chapter 6: A Bad First Impression. The police arrived quickly, since the station was just across the street. Hearing the sirens, the old man wanted to flee, but Su Qian stopped him. When the police reached her, there was no need for her to explain. They understood right away. The officer cuffed the old man, saying, "Il est air, you've got guts, trying to scam people just a street away from the station?" Officer, I was just short of money, he replied. Upon hearing this, onlookers realized the girl was innocent. Although they felt like apologizing, their pride held them back. They too had been misled and hadn't done anything more, so they sheepishly dispersed. However, Su Qian grabbed the woman in the pink outfit and told the police, "Officer, this person might be an accomplice." She had noticed that the first person to instigate was speaking in the same dialect as the scammer, and their socks were identical. Don't go anywhere. Come with us for investigation, the officer said, cuffing the wailing woman. Turning to Su Qian, he smiled, miss, we'll need you to come with us to give a statement." Sure. Since she had to go to the police station to give a statement, and also wanted to use a computer at an internet cafe to look up information on the male lead for tomorrow's reunion, Su Qian phoned a neighbor asking her to watch Su Yong for the night. Her neighbor, a community director known for her warm-hearted nature, readily agreed, as she had always liked Su Yong. That day, Su Qian returned home late at night. Su Yong also stayed up late, unable to sleep. He was anxious as it was the first time his mom had treated him so coldly. The next morning, Su Qian picked up Su Yong from the neighbor's house, had breakfast with him downstairs, and then headed straight to Jian Corporation's building. That's your dad, Su Qian said, pointing through the glass window to the lounge area, indicating the cover of a magazine featuring the novel's male lead, Jian Zhongyan, the head of Jian Corporation. Hello, Mom. Can I help you with anything? The security guard, seeing Su Qian and her son lingering at the entrance, approached them. No, we're fine, Su Qian waved her hand and moved along with Su Yong. She wouldn't be able to see Jian Zhongyan even with an appointment due to her status, so she followed the route she'd scouted the previous day. Circling to the back, they entered the underground parking garage. Su Qian led Su Yong to the dog hole she had found. Suddenly, Su Yong stopped and let go of her hand. What's wrong? With a stern face, Su Yong pulled out a paper-wrapped envelope from his backpack. This is 2,000 yuan. He had counted it multiple times last night, exactly 20 bills. Su Qian raised an eyebrow. She had given Su Yong the silent treatment since their argument the day before yesterday. The original Su Yong couldn't handle the little tyrant, but she wouldn't coddle him. Despite using all his usual tactics to make Su Qian relent, they had little effect. What he just handed her was the first thing he'd said to her since last night. Are you planning to abandon me? Su Yong asked, feeling aggrieved as Su Qian took the envelope. That man can't be my dad. Grandma said my dad was a poor laborer at a construction site. Su Yong hadn't seen the man on the magazine cover, but knew only successful people got interviewed. He believed Su Qian was fooling him. After all, some kids at kindergarten even claimed their dads were superheroes, obviously false. The night before, he had reconciled with the idea of saving more money to find his dad. If Su Qian needed a phone, she should buy one. Before bed, he had carefully placed the money in his backpack. But he hadn't seen her all day, and now she was bringing him to an unfamiliar place. Su Yong looked around, feeling disoriented and unsure how to get home. Your grandma isn't trustworthy. Has Mommy ever lied to you? Su Qian diverted his question of abandonment and continued to lead him eastward. Su Yong thought for a moment. True, his mom hadn't lied to him before. We're here. Leading Su Yong through the dog hole, they successfully evaded the patrolling security and reached the underground parking garage. According to the novel, the male lead's parking spot was marked with his birthday. Su Qian had checked online at the internet cafe last night. Jian Zhongyan's birthday was May 8th, spot number 58. Finding the location, she checked the time, 5 minutes to 9. Perfect. Hiding in the shadows behind a pillar, away from view, Su Qian whispered, Daddy will be able to provide you with better things. If you need anything, just tell Daddy, he'll always say yes. But before she could finish, the sound of an approaching car interrupted her. She stood up, ready to see if it was the male lead. Su Qian didn't notice her son's distressed look. Su Yong realized that Su Qian intended to give him to his dad. She truly didn't want him anymore. Though he had always wanted to find his dad, it was out of curiosity, so he could tell his kindergarten friends what his dad looked like. He had never thought of leaving Su Qian, even if it meant living with a mom who only knew how to cry when things went wrong. Su Qian, Su Yong wanted to express his feelings, but Su Qian pulled him out just as the car arrived. The car belonged to the male lead. Dressed in a black suit, neatly groomed, with chestnut hair slicked back, revealing impeccable and sharp features. If Su Yong looked like a little angel, then Jian Zhongyan was akin to a divinely handsome figure. His cold, distant gaze exuded an aura of unattainable nobility, making him seem as high and untouchable as a flower on a distant peak. Su Qian's momentary daze was fleeting. She had already marveled at his photo in the online interview last night. No wonder Su Yong recognized his father so easily in the book. Their resemblance was uncanny. A man of such stature was always accompanied by bodyguards. The moment Su Qian pulled Su Yong out, they were intercepted. The male lead didn't bother looking at them, continuing his stride, making Su Qian shout out in frustration, Jian Zhongyan, stop. He didn't even pause. Darn it, he truly was an unfeeling male lead, indifferent to the supporting characters. Are you refusing to acknowledge your son? That made Jian Zhongyan stop. In all his life, no woman had ever dared to pull such a stunt. Everyone in the business world knew Jian Zhongyan never toyed with women. Years ago, a scandal involving a commercial blackmail scheme had caused an uproar, where the masterminds used photoshopped images to blackmail top executives. Yet, they hadn't dared target Jian Zhongyan, such was his reputation for chastity. And now, a woman was demanding he acknowledge a son. Utter nonsense. Chapter 7, A Real Son. Jian Zhongyan's lips curled into a cold smile as he approached Su Qian and said, "You don't play such tricks with me. Slander comes at a price." No matter who had sent her, he didn't mind setting an example by dealing harshly with a scheming woman, ensuring others wouldn't dare to use such tactics against him. A worthy move. 6 years ago, at the Riverside Hotel, red teardrop birthmark on the thigh, Su Qian lifted her chin and mentioned the location without fear of Jian Zhongyan's imposing presence. Mentioning the male lead's private birthmark, Su Qian did so with a hint of mockery. At these words, Jian Zhongyan's gaze turned dark and stormy. He had a sharp memory and vividly recalled his encounter with a woman there. Drugged by an opponent intent on ruining his reputation, he had managed to escape, subsequently having an encounter with a woman while in a dazed state. When he woke the next morning, she had disappeared. Hotel surveillance had been broken, and as the check-in was under his ID, there was no trace of the woman. Initially suspecting a trap, he had found no further evidence. Could the woman before him? You can get a DNA test for your son. Here's my contact information, reach out to me later, and we'll sort out the follow-up. Su Qian slapped a piece of paper into Jian Zhongyan's hand, then bent down to pinch the dazed Su Yang's cheek. This is your daddy. I kept my promise. Take care of yourself. She swiftly relayed this message and turned to leave. The bodyguards beside them didn't dare intercept. They wished they had no ears upon hearing their boss's private affairs. Jian Zhongyan finally had the chance to examine the child's face properly, and didn't notice Su Qian had already left, as he was lost in the shock of looking at Su Yang's features. Su Yong was equally astonished. Seeing Jian Zhongyan's face, he started to believe his mom's words that this was his dad. But he didn't want a dad anymore. He had done everything he could last night, but his mom didn't respond. And this morning, she hadn't reacted either. In hindsight, he regretted talking about finding his dad. His mother must think he wants a dad more than her. Now understanding things, Soo-young decided to clear things up with his mom, but when he turned around, she was already gone. Never having been separated from his mother before, panic welled up in Soo-young. His mom had always told him men don't cry, but still, he needed his mom. Soo-young looked to Jen Jonyen for help, clutching his small backpack and sniffing sorrowfully. "I made Soo-chen mad. Can you plead for me?" Jen Jonyen stared at the little boy before him, conflicted, not knowing what to say. "Get in the car." Okay." Though Soo-young climbed into the car, clutching his backpack, his eyes were filled with deep wariness towards Jen Jonyen. Jen Jonyen turned his gaze outside, intertwining his fingers in contemplation, his expression complex. Neither had anything to say, and thus, the car exited the underground garage, heading towards an unknown destination. As per the plot, Jen Jonyen and his son were supposed to reunite 6 months later. Being the male lead and Soo-young's biological father, Soo-chen felt reassured leaving Soo-young with Jen Jonyen. Whether it was the original or current Soo-chen, the hardest thing to let go of was her son. With Soo-young settled, she felt both reluctant and oddly relieved. To Soo-chen, being teleported into a novel as a parent was a major life shift. She saw it as a breather, a chance to get a better grasp on her own life situation. With the money from the envelope, she planned to buy a phone first. While Soo-chen maintained her composure, Jen Jonyen's experience was like a bombshell. Driving directly from the parking lot, he went to a private hospital owned by Jen Corporation. The dean, having received a call, awaited him at the entrance. From within the car, Jen Jonyen passed through a file envelope. "Je paternity test results by this afternoon." Hearing continuous affirmations from the dean, he drove back to his apartment. Since getting into Jen Jonyen's car at the company, then going to the hospital, and finally arriving at the high-end apartment complex, Soo-young had not cried or made a fuss. He looked out the window, deep in thought. "Drink some water." Jen Jonyen placed a glass in front of Soo-young. Though the report had yet to confirm it, his intuition suggested that this boy was most likely his son. "I want to be alone. Until it's confirmed you're my dad, I don't want to talk to you." Despite being only 5, Soo-young exhibited an adult-like calm. He had overheard everything spoken when the report was submitted. Nowadays, with the internet booming, even though Soo-young's home only had a television, his neighbor had a learning device that connected to the internet where he could look up many things. So despite his young age, Soo-young knew a lot. He could read more words than 2nd or 3rd graders even though he was still in kindergarten. Jen Jonyen's eyebrow twitched at Soo-young's words, but the child's reaction did make him feel relieved. He didn't care for kids, especially those who were noisy, cried, and were difficult to communicate with. All right." Jen Jonyen agreed, taking Soo-young to a bedroom to rest while he retreated to the study. They had no further communication. In the afternoon, the hospital report arrived, delivered personally by the dean. Reading the document stating a genetic match with a paternity exclusion likelihood of over 0.9999, Jen Jonyen confirmed Soo-young was indeed his son. He had a son. Jen Jonyen felt unreal, neither upset nor particularly happy. This was something he had never envisioned. However, he couldn't deny that upon seeing Soo-young for the first time, he felt an indescribable sense of closeness, perhaps the power of blood ties? Rubbing his temples, he called Soo-young out and handed him the paternity report. Soo-young examined it carefully. With his eyes on the child before him, Jen Jonyen realized he only knew his name was Soo-young. He was 5 years old, and they looked very much alike, making Jen Jonyen feel more affectionate compared to other children. Soo-young, with a serious expression, set the report on the table, sighed, and looked at Jen Jonyen, See, I don't understand it. Despite his precocity, he was still a 5-year-old. The various genetic markers and other details were beyond his comprehension. A hint of a smile flickered in Jian Zhangyan's eyes as he stated simply, I am your dad. His words came out stiffly. Trying to soften his tone, his lack of experience with children made it sound awkward. Welcome to subscribe to my channel. Thank you for following Wonder Comics.